Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Wednesday. This is Seattle Now. The Pacific Northwest has a fascinating history when it comes to modern art. A group of prominent painters active during the mid-century became known as the Big Four. A new exhibition at Seattle Art Museum goes beyond the big names and explores how Seattle and the Northwest is reflected in the wealth of modern art that was created here. Coming up, we'll talk with the exhibition's curator. But first, let's get you caught up. New data from Pike Place Market suggests that its car-free policy is helping bring in more business. The Urbanist reports that sales at retail stores within the market rose 9%, with restaurants seeing a 10% boost between May and September last year. The number of visitors who live within 30 miles of the market also increased. The car-free pilot is currently set to last until Labor Day this year. Bellevue-based T-Mobile announced a new super broadband internet service Tuesday, furthering its connection with Elon Musk-owned satellite company Starlink. Starlink has a satellite factory located in neighboring Redmond in what the city's Chamber of Commerce calls the Redmond Space District. T-Mobile says it will be the first nationwide broadband solution to reach every zip code in the U.S. The company laid off nearly 400 Washington-based employees earlier this month. And two credit agencies have expressed doubt in Washington's financial future. Both Fitch Ratings and Moody's have dropped Washington's credit outlook from stable to negative. Both pointed to the state's decision to pull money from its rainy day fund to address budget shortfalls. The Washington state treasurer described the Moody's projection as a check engine light warning. If the state doesn't address the issue, it may be more expensive to borrow money in the future. We're back with more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. In 1953, Life magazine published a widely read story titled Mystic Painters of the Northwest. It puts Seattle in the spotlight as a creative hub of modernist art. Artists Guy Anderson, Kenneth Callahan, Mark Tobey, and Morris Graves were known as the Big Four. A new exhibition at Seattle Art Museum explores the history of modernist art in the Northwest even further. It's called Beyond Mysticism, the Modern Northwest. Teresa Papanikolas is Sam's curator of American art. We met up recently at the museum to get a tour of the exhibition. Teresa Papanikolas, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And thank you for joining us. We're at the museum.
Always happy to come down to Sam and say hello. Let's start by briefing listeners about the history of modern art in the Pacific Northwest. What should they understand about this movement?
Just that they should understand that, there are artists who achieved national acclaim in the mid-century, like right during and really right after World War II, for their work that was more abstract. And what's really happening, or what people don't really know, is that there was so much more happening in art in the Northwest during this time. There were artists who were coming out of social realist styles. There were artists who were practicing surrealism. So it's a really, really rich cultural scene going on during this period. And the period under study is the 1930s, 1940s into the 1950s.
The exhibition gets its name from the term Northwest Mystics, which has an interesting origin. Let's talk about that.
So that is one of those journalistic things, actually. It was in 1953, an article came out in Life magazine called The Mystic Painters of the Northwest. And Life magazine, as you know, was in everybody's living room. Everybody was reading it. And so this is how modernism in the Northwest got on everybody's radar. The article focused on Morris Graves, Mark Tobey, Kenneth Callahan, Guy Anderson, and it talked about them as being deeply spiritual, interested in Asian art, very oriented to the Pacific, and also connected to nature, and also very mystical. And so the term mystic kind of stuck in this region. It's a term that I first started hearing when I came to Seattle 7 years ago. And I always thought, like, what is so mystical about these artists? So,
yeah. Well, it's interesting because the Pacific Northwest it's almost impossible to live here and not appreciate nature.
Yeah, and I think that that's what the person who wrote the article, it went uncredited in Life. The person who wrote the article was really connected to, just that received notion of the Northwest as being someplace that's kind of mysterious. It's kind of far off in the left corner of the U.S. It's surrounded by mountains and water. It's maybe not easy to get to, or not where everybody goes on a regular basis. So there was an air of mystery around it. And so it would stand to follow that an article focused on the artists would tap into that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's visit some of your favorite pieces around the gallery in the exhibit.
Sounds good. So why don't we start at the beginning? Yeah,
Oh, this is gorgeous. Tell me what we're looking at.
So we are looking at a painting by Jacob Elshin. We are in the first gallery of the exhibition. And this is a room full of paintings and watercolors that are not at all mystical. These are cityscapes. They're very realistic. They're of recognizable places. They are of places in Seattle. This painting is by Jacob Elshin, who is not an artist a lot of people have heard of, not a real household name. He was an artist who was very influenced by Paul Cézanne. This is probably the best painting I've seen by him. Is a picture of Harbor Island. And it was the largest artificial island in the world when it was built. It was constructed out of land that was dredged out of Puget Sound to build the harbor, and also raised during the regrade of the hills in Seattle to build roads. So they used all the leftover land to build this island. On the island is Fisher Flouring Mill, which was a huge flour mill. It's still there today. I just read actually they're redeveloping it into studio space, which is really cool. But at that time, it processed the grain supply for the city's population. Then all around it are boats, wharves, docks, buildings, just the jumble of the city's waterfront. And this painting really captures the rapid industrialization of this region during the early 20th century. By 1930, Seattle had grown faster than any other place in the United States. It had become heavily industrialized. The land had become completely transformed. Hills were bulldozed over. Rivers were rerouted, all to pave the way for settler inhabitants. And so what this is, a very seemingly innocuous, very straightforward picture, but it tells a multitude of stories.
Yeah, we can see two workers down here.
Yes, yep.
Moving
cut lumber,
boards.
Yep. And that's another important part of the story, is the lumber industry, which we'll get to.
Yeah. And this is also Jacob Elshin, not one of the big four.
Right.
This is the beyond part.
Right. This is beyond mysticism right here.
Okay.
All
What
right.
should we see next? What else? There's so many pieces to look at.
Yeah, let's go into the next room.
What is the rest of the story of the beyond, those four artists?
So we're in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So right now we are in a room with about 22 paintings by an artist by the name of Vanessa Helder, another one of these non-Big Four artists. Helder was a Seattle artist who went to Spokane to teach in the Spokane Arts Center, and she became fascinated with the construction of the Grand Coulee Dam. And so these are paintings, each one of them a moment in the construction of the dam. So you see views of the dam under construction, you see pictures of workers who are working on the dam, and they really capture another one of these huge projects, these huge earth-moving projects. Grand Coulee Dam was the largest concrete structure in the world when it was built. At the time, it was just a huge feat of engineering, encroaching on the landscape, completely transforming it, and Helder captures this.
What I love about these, first of all, is the light in the paintings
Yes,
is beautiful.
yes.
And the other
Gorgeous.
thing, she captures both the work and the rest.
And a lot of that was because she was allowed to visit the dam site. She was the only woman allowed on the site, but she wasn't allowed to make sketches. And so she would just go to the surrounding communities and look down at the dam. And
Really?
then while she was there, she was also painting those communities too. So her experience of that construction was from within these communities.
Really fascinating, really fascinating. Let's talk a little bit about the origins of this exhibit, because you mentioned some of these were in Sam's collection.
Right. So I came to Sam 7 years ago. Like most curators, one of my first things that I did was to get to know the collection. And I was getting to know the collection both to reinstall our American art galleries and to also just kind of figure out what we had. And I kept finding all of these amazing things that did not conform to my own received history of Northwest modernism. And I would look in the records and I would see like, oh, the last time this was shown was in the 30s, or maybe we've never shown it, or, we don't really exhibit it on a regular basis. It has a 1970s frame. It needs a new frame. And I was just like, why aren't we paying attention to these works? And so a lot of them did go into American Art, The Stories We Carry, which was our 2022 reinstallation of our American art galleries. Then the rest became the basis for this exhibition. And not only, I just wanted to say, are there works by Northwest artists in the exhibition, but there are also works for artists who worked on more of a national scale, artists like Georgia O'Keeffe, Marsden Hartley, Charles Sheeler. These are artists who form sort of the canonical history of American modernism, and including their works in the exhibition, show how our Northwest artists are going hand in hand with that and are in line with these more national movements.
Let's look at another piece.
So we'll go to this cluster of paintings right here.
Oh, I love these. Oh my gosh.
So now we're in the second section of the exhibition, and this is a section called Nature. So what we're looking at are 3 paintings by Kenneth Callahan. These are all scenes from the Cascades, probably when he would go out there to be in his cabin. He had a cabin in the North Cascades where he would retreat and paint and think and contemplate. And there's like a million of these. These are all over. Anyone who has a painting by Kenneth Callahan, it's likely one of these landscapes. And I started to notice something consistent about them as I looked at them over and over, and that is each one of them has a stand of snags, of logged off tree stumps. And I started to think, like, what is going on here? And then behind us is another painting by Callahan, and it's of railroad workers. These are, it's a group of maybe 20 laborers building one of the narrow gauge railroads that were built by the lumber companies to take workers farther and farther into the forest and logs out of them. And I started to wonder, what is Callahan's position on logging, right? Logging was the biggest industry. It had a very visible effect on the forest here, as Callahan captures in his paintings. And Callahan himself had done murals both on commission and not on commission of logging. But these paintings are a little different. These show a darker side of logging. They show the forest, they show the effects of logging on the forest. Callahan had an opportunity to go to a logging camp and spend a couple of days there, observing. He and his partner, Margaret, went there. And Margaret writes about it. And she writes, in 5 or 10 years, there won't be forests like this left. So they were witnessing the cutting down of the old growth forests. And in the paintings, you see nature, especially this painting of the construction of the logging railroad. It's not the green, lush Cascades that we know. These mountains are barren, they're brown, they're foretelling of, the impact on the environment. So when I started to look at works by other artists, like Morris Graves, with whom Callahan was very good friends at the time, Graves is focusing on animals. His animals are anxious. He too is concerned about overdevelopment and its impact on the various biomes in the Northwest ecosystem. So these artists are they have a very real, a very eco-critical approach to their landscapes, which I find very fascinating.
We learn about the artists. What can we learn about the Northwest from these artists?
Well, we can learn about the impact of industry on the landscape, sort of the other side of the lumber industry that, was really such an economic driver at the time, is also having an effect on the natural world here. So it's kind of a love-hate relationship. It's, giving us the building materials that are needed, but then at a cost.
There's another large painting with the Weyerhaeuser logo on it. Goes so far back in our history here.
Right. Well, these were commissioned by Weyerhaeuser. So this painting, this is of...
it's a kinder view of the logging industry.
Kind of.
Say more.
This is, I mentioned Callahan did murals on commission about logging, and so this was commissioned by Weyerhaeuser Lumber Company for the cafeteria at its large sawmill in Everett. So it's his biggest sawmill. There were 18 paintings. We're showing 2 of them in the exhibition. The one we're looking at is of the sawmill itself. The one adjacent to it is of loggers deep in the forest moving a giant old-growth tree that's been cut up. These were for the cafeteria for the staff to boost morale. So they're supposedly celebrating the logging industry.
Wow.
They were interspersed by pictures of Paul Bunyan, maybe as an inspiration. So,
wow.
They're totally awesome. But I can't unsee the fact that there is smoke belching from the smokestacks in this sawmill. Black and gray smoke, and lots of it. There's the earth on which the complex sits is brown. There's nothing growing on it, hardly. But then in the background, you see the river and then the mountains beyond, and they're lush and green. So there's a contrast there. So I think even in these more official and more logging-friendly compositions, Callahan is inserting a bit of an eco-critical view.
Do you have a favorite work in this collection?
So we can go into the next room.
Yeah.
And look at one last
We'll go out on your favorite
paintings.
work of art
Yes.
here. Oh, wow.
So these are everyone's favorite. These are surrealist paintings by an artist by the name of Malcolm Roberts. And he was an artist who, in the 1930s, came under the influence of Salvador Dali. And you can really see in these paintings sort of Dali-esque dreamscapes. They're highly illusionistic, but there's all these elements in them that don't quite add up. So the one we're looking at, you see a beach with a piece of driftwood and then a bathtub kind of impaled on it, like a weird shipwreck or something like that. And this is an example of one of those discoveries that I made in the collection where I was looking for artwork to put in one of our galleries downstairs, and I came across these and I was just like, what are these? These are awesome. So I'm very happy to be able to show them now.
Yeah. Teresa Papanikolaou, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Seattle Art Museum's new exhibition is called Beyond Mysticism, The Modern Northwest, and it runs through August 2nd. Thank you for listening, and thanks to our generous donors for your financial support. Take a moment to rate the show or even share it with a friend. Today's episode was produced by Andy Hurst. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Our production team also includes Vaughn Jones, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tonight for Evening Headlines.